Live from Atlanta, Georgia, it's the Zach Ballinger Show, where we help you find your direction through passion and purpose. My name is Zach Ballinger. I am your host. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We are streaming live via Facebook and YouTube. If you guys are out there listening, you have any questions for our guests, please enter them in the comments section. We will read them at the end of the show, and we're excited to have our guest. Scott, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me, Zach.
I want to lay out the format for our guests. If you're new to listening, what we'll basically do is learn more about Scott's career. We'll ask him some long format questions, and then we'll go straight to the comments. So, Scott, what is your exact occupation and your title?
That's a good question. As an entrepreneur, it always changes. So I'm one of the co-founders of Otter PR, and I would say that my title is actually operations management or COO. But really, as an entrepreneur, you own many hats. So I guess you call me a founder. I do a lot of operations. I don't actually do much of the PR side, but do a lot in the sales and helping run the business.
Gotcha. And so how many years have you been in this realm?
So I started my first entrepreneurial journey about 4 years ago. Before I was an engineer working for Eaton Corporation in electrical manufacturing, doing operations management and sales. So a lot of what I did kind of transitioned over, but I've been in the PR realm for only about a year and marketing for the last 3.
Gotcha. And so what are you passionate about in your job right now? What brings you the most joy? What do you love about it?
I think as an entrepreneur and someone building a business, right now I employ 30 people, so it's pretty cool to be relied on and help families live basically. But I like putting together the operational business side of it, actually getting all the functional back end to work, getting processes to work, finding ways to scale at mass is really a cool thing. And it's the business of business. It's really understanding how a business runs and even the finance, just looking at the accounting and everything and making sure that the business itself is solid, and then focusing on a good service as well.
And, this is a tough question for some folks. Some folks know it already off the top of their head, but what do you like least about it? What should people know behind the scenes that might keep you up at night or might cause some challenges?
There's a couple things. The biggest is definitely the unknown. My salary in the last 3 years has gone from $10 a day to $5,000 a day. And that's just a crazy jump, and it'll fluctuate where some months I'm making $30,000 profit, and some months I've lost money. So I think the unknown of an entrepreneur's life is not palatable to a lot of people. So you have to have a different mentality and the ability to fail and use those failures to take your next step and kind of keep getting back up. It's very different than working in corporate world, because if you make a mistake, even a big one, usually you still have your job and the company loses money, but you don't lose money. Whereas when I'm playing with my money. And so if I make a $100,000 mistake, I literally watch $100,000 disappear overnight. And it's happened to me. So that's the hardest part of being an entrepreneur.
Thanks for that. A good answer. What is your education training? What kind of do you have any certifications? Can you walk me through a little bit through your educational background?
Yeah, so I went to the University of Florida. I have a degree in industrial and systems engineering. So pretty qualified for the operations side. I worked for Eaton Corporation for a couple of years. Did the Six Sigma certification with them, which is pretty intense if you do it corporately. And that's really it. Most of it's on the job training. I think as an entrepreneur, all of my trainings come from books and online certifications that aren't really, they're just quote unquote gurus that charge you $1,000 to $5,000 for class. But some of them have a lot of value, some of them don't. I think that they've helped me along my journey, but most of my formal training is through the University of Florida.
May have to end the interview a little early, given that you're a Florida grad. I'm from the University of Tennessee, but we're bad at football. So,
oh man, you guys have had a rough couple of years.
Yeah. So I didn't know that you were a Gator. No, I'm just joking. So, what does a typical day look like for you? I know that's so challenging because everybody I ask, they're like, well, geez, that changes from whatever day. But if you had to name a typical day, when you get up in the morning to when you go to bed at night, what does that look like?
So again, as an entrepreneur, my goal is not to have a typical day. I'm currently in a routine where I'm doing a lot of sales and a lot of operations, but to me, that just means that I need to hire someone to do sales and I need to hire someone to do my operations, because my goal as a business owner is to be an owner eventually. Right now, I'm an employee of the company. And so what that means is eventually you want to be able to walk away from your company and it runs and grows without you, or anything you do is just added value. I am crucial to my business right now, which means that I have not successfully transitioned to owning the company where I'm still an employee. So, but my day to day really is mostly sales and operations. It's making sure that clients are happy, processes are working, and that we're bringing in new clients. So again, the goal of the entrepreneurship is to outsource that. So eventually, I already have a VP of client relations, and we're offloading a lot of that, and we have a VP of sales, we're offloading a lot of that. So it's building out those processes to the point where I don't need to be involved, and less of making like the big level decisions, almost like a board member just kind of voting on the right direction of the company.
Gotcha. So let's say I'm a high school student out there. When I was in high school, I knew about 10 careers, the most: teacher, firefighter, police officer. I think a lot of us that come out of the high school world, and no matter what field you're in, you only know a few careers. So I would say a lot of the people out there in high school or even in elementary school, A, have no idea what PR means, and B, have no idea what marketing means. Can you give us a one-on-one on both?
Yeah, so the way we focus on public relations, PR, is we're trying to get earned media for a company. So if you think Apple, which is a massive company, most of their advertising is done through media. So you see Forbes articles, you see New York Times articles about iPhone leaks, and I'm talking about iPhone because they just came out, but you're seeing all these influencers posting reviews, and they actually have, I was reading the other day that they have a specific day that the reviews are allowed to release on YouTube. So they probably have millions of dollars invested in getting these iPhones out there on a specific day and release on a specific time with NDAs and things like that. So that's more of media. Even the influencers, which is not everyone considers influencers media, but that earned press is the media that you're looking for, and that's what we're trying to help you do. It's more organic branding. So the value of a Forbes article versus a pay-per-click advertisement, which is like a Facebook ad, is that Forbes article is there forever. And if it's positive about your company, you're going to look, there's more trust because Forbes said it, you didn't say it. So an advertisement is just something I paid to put up there. And, I can say I have the best X, Y, and Z forever. And you'll see a lot of people trying to steal your money saying, oh, I have the best course ever. But when Forbes says it, there's been some kind of vetting. So usually you have a contributor that's vetted it, you have an editor that's vetted it, and then Forbes can get in trouble for putting out false information. So there's a lot of process in there that's kind of designed to make you trust them. And not all information on the media is true, but the idea is that there's an inherent trust to what you're going to see there. And so that's what we're trying to do, is help build these brands in a strong branding play versus just an advertisement.
And then marketing 101, what would you say to that? If somebody's out there and they're like, what's marketing? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, of course. So marketing is a massive term. So PR is just a form of marketing. Marketing is any way you're telling people about your business. It's getting the word out there. So marketing could be as simple as someone saying on the corner using flyering. So they're just trying to get people to pay attention to the brand business, to whatever they use as marketing. They're just saying, hey, there's this event going on Saturday. It can be even word of mouth. It can be me saying, hey, that event was really cool. I loved going to X, Y, and Z, and I had a great time. That's marketing. And the company are trying to get people to do that. And so it's finding out how to get people to talk about your brand or your business.
Gotcha. And, I think this helps audiences connect to the guest better. But I always ask this question, you look back through your education and your career life, and it seems like behind every success that I've interviewed, because most of the people that come on the show have been pretty successful in their career, there's always an adversity story that's been working in behind the scenes, or they went through something that's made them question who they are. Can you think back to a time over either your education or your career where you've had this moment, and can you explain that?
I mean, that's part of being an entrepreneur. That's always going to be part of the journey. So for me, the biggest failure or issue I had was right before COVID hit. Most of my business was e-commerce based, and I was aware of what was happening with COVID in Asia. I did a lot of my sourcing from there, and my supply chains dried up completely. And so it was before everything happened here where I was like, uh-oh, I can't even get my stuff here. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the US. And I had some really bad cash flow issues. We had a whole bunch of inventory purchased for live events. So all of my money was tied up in inventory, and some of it wasn't even being delivered. It was being delayed months, but I was under contract, so I couldn't get the cash back. So I actually had about $500 in my bank account and about $150,000 loan, and I couldn't pay that loan payments. And that's actually about when AutoPR started. I had a big history in marketing and advertising and PR, and had a lot of success with it in the past. And so people kept asking me how to do it. And I had 4 or 5 friends I was helping, and they just kind of, eventually I was just like, listen, I need to get paid to do this now because I'm not doing as well as I was a month ago. And so that was the beginning of it. And it grew exponentially, where AutoPR is now my most successful business. But it grew out of near failure. I was looking at bankruptcy and having to get a job and going back to corporate life, which I really didn't want to do. So for me, that was a big change in my life where I pretty much failed. So I don't think it gets much lower than that financially, at least hopefully not, but it was definitely scary.
I love the pure intent that you created with that, because I know there's a lot of people out there that have faced devastating things since the pandemic. And that might be a layoff, or it might be getting fired. I was asked the other day, what was the advice you had for people that were laid off or people that were fired during the pandemic. One of the things you can do is you can take it from 2 angles. You can say, emotionally, it's going to be very devastating, obviously. But you can look at them 2 angles. You can say, all right, I got fired. I'm doomed. Nothing I can do. I need to take a really low paying job. And you may have to do that short term. I get it. Or you can look at it as, this is the year I changed my life, and I'm going to do something that I enjoy, and I'm going to reinvent myself. And this is a great time to do it. And so you kind of did that, if I'm hearing it right, is that you were on the verge of, like you said, bankruptcy. And now you've emerged into being successful. I bet there was many sleepless nights during that. And how did you keep yourself motivated?
Part of it is I have a really good business partner, so he was in there with me. He wasn't as financially tied to the business as I was. I had more of a all-in kind of scenario. But there are a lot of sleepless nights. I think the strategy is just to know that every failure is going to make you better in the end, as long as you can continue and turn that into an educational moment. So I think you really have to look at all failures as just a lesson learned. I have a giant book of lessons learned, of things that I will never do again, or at least really hope I don't do again. And they're important, and it's important to make those mistakes ideally smaller. So even though at the time that was, all the money I had, it was $150,000. Now I'm making almost $2 million a year. And if I'd make the same mistake again, it's going to be with, $1 million. And so I'd much rather, you can dig your way out of $100,000 or $10,000 or even a $5,000 mistake as a new entrepreneur. It's much harder to dig yourself out of these larger mistakes once you're down the line. So I'd much rather, have the first 3 years be bumpy and hard versus smooth sailing. And then all of a sudden I'm 5 years in, never made a mistake. And then I make a massive mistake and I don't want to fix it because I never dealt with that before. So I feel almost lucky that I've made these mistakes when, especially starting off, a lot of my mistakes were $5,000 mistakes or $4,000 mistakes. And, I broke even at the end, but I just didn't make any money kind of thing. And that's part of it. You got to go in knowing that you might not be successful for 2 or 3 years. And one of the biggest things that I can recommend to people is find a mentor, even in professional corporate life. If you're going to be an engineer, you're going to do whatever it is, connect with someone, leadership in the company, connect with someone who's going to guide you. And if you can't find that mentor in the company, it's not the right company for you. And same with entrepreneurship, is you got to have someone that's kind of has your back, helping you along the way. I even had other entrepreneurs who were financially well off kind of support me in a way, whether it was just buying the service, even if they didn't need it, just to help get me through some rough times. So those mentors will be critical throughout the process.
It feels like I have this conversation every show or every interview I do. It's actually in my new book that's coming out in November, and it seems so people hear the advice. It seems so common sense, but they don't do it. Is I really believe you have to have a mentor. And no matter what phase of you are in your life or your career, they really bring a lot of experience. And people that come on the show, it's almost everyone that says they've had some type of a mentor that's made a positive impact in your life. They recommend it like you have. And so I think for people out there listening, the value of a mentor is amazing that it can have on your impact, your career. And you really need to start with one, and you really need to have one. Now, if you're even transitioning to another job, a mentor is so critical, especially if you're going to own your own business. I talk about this all the time. I met somebody that they were passionate about cooking, so they wanted to own their own restaurant. And so I said, you need to get a mentor or an expert in the restaurant industry to see if that's something you want to own. And so they did that. They listened to my advice. They got a mentor. I talked to them a month or two later, and they said, Zach, I'm not going to own my own restaurant. And I said, well, why? I thought you were passionate about cooking. He said, well, I'm passionate about cooking. I'm not passionate about owning a restaurant and dealing with people. And so that is why I think it's so important before you make any decisions to have a mentor. So thanks for touching on that. What did you, when you were a kid, let's think back to grade school or middle school, what did you want to be? Did you ever have a dream career?
I wanted to be an architect. And as an engineer, I don't feel like I swayed too far from it. I was in an engineering magnet program, and we had some architecture classes. I very much pursued it. I'm kind of one of those people that if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to pretty much do it. There's not many things I haven't done that I said I was going to do, including quitting my job and traveling to 30 countries. But I wanted to be an architect, and I was pursuing it. And we had a couple architects come speak and kind of tell us what it was actually like being an architect. And I realized that was not the job for me. But that's how I pivoted into engineering. And so I actually, even though I changed kind of the actual title, I feel like I still followed pretty much what I thought architecture was into engineering, but it was the same transition. And I do love being an engineer. I don't use a lot of what I learned, but there's a lot of on the operations side that you learn as an engineer, at least the kind that I was, industrial and systems, that has transitioned through all my businesses. And the ability to focus on details and numbers is pretty critical that you have, or you either bring in an accountant or someone that can help you with the numbers, because you're going to be running ads, you're going to be deciding where to spend your effort, and you have to have some kind of understanding of where the return is.
Let's go back to specifically the public relations and the marketing. What kind of skills do you think someone needs to possess or learn to be successful in those type of career fields?
Yeah, so we hire a lot. We have 30 employees right now, and there's really two things we look at. It's communication and writing skills. In PR, it's all relationship building, so almost in a sense selling. But if you cannot write at a high level, you're not going to be able to get the releases out there, because a lot of them are either what's called a wire release, where you're sending a release to like ABC, Fox, and it gets hosted on their sites and says press release, or email marketing, and you're just emailing people that have opted in to receive information about potential clients. And so both are written, and then the ability to have a good communication with your client. And then if the site like Forbes calls you back and says, hey, we're interested, you have to communicate very well what your client's story is and why it's so important to them. If you think about PR or media, anything is a currency. So for me to get a client placed on Forbes, I have to have that client return value to Forbes. So that story has to be interesting to people. So your publicist needs to be able to brand you in a way that is interesting, to get readers onto Forbes. Because really, at the end of the day, they're almost entertainment. They just want people reading their sites and trusting them and sharing it and getting the word out there about why Forbes is the best. It's all a branding play. So if I can't add value, they're not going to publish me. And that's really what the publicist does. So again, the communication and the writing skills and honestly creative thinking are three of the most important parts of being a publicist.
Do you do any crisis management, PR, or anything like that?
Yeah, we do crisis management. That's more relationship building. So usually when we're doing crisis management, we're not pitching a solution. We're calling people and saying, hey, this has to happen. And we're strong arming. So that's that's a whole different type of PR where it's a much more aggressive, pulling favors and almost being mean in a sense of trying to get things done for your clients. And it's a big deal. Trying to figure out how to reposition someone in the right light, forcing them onto big shows so they can save faces is a hard thing to do. And a lot of companies have gone under because their CEO or someone important to the company has said something silly, especially during COVID and all the activities that were going on through the protests and things like that. There are several companies that had some really big PR nightmares and CEOs had to step down. So that's a common issue that we deal with. And it's very different than traditional PR.
Then what would you say, what kind of skills does someone need to be a good marketer or be in that type of field? What kind of skills do they need to gain? What do they need to be good at? You hit on the PR stuff as communication and the ability to build relationships. What about marketing?
In my opinion, sales is the biggest part of any of this. Everything you're doing is some form of sales. And I think that anyone that doesn't realize that their job is sales related is wrong. Because you're either selling yourself to your boss or you're selling yourself to your client or you're actually selling a service. But I think that with marketing, it's just being able to communicate the value of a product and to really sell it and get people excited. That's going to be the goal always.
Gotcha. And so thank you for that. So we'll go to the questions. We did have a couple on the email line and I wanted to get to them. So I'm a sophomore in college. What is the difference between public relations and advertising?
So usually when you're studying, they're going to be pretty similar. Advertising is usually paid ads. So if you think about a Facebook ad where it says sponsored underneath, or you see those Google search ads where it's going to show you, it'll say sponsored or ad or something like that. So that's usually what I consider advertising. They're both under the marketing umbrella. So you have marketing and then you'd have advertising and PR kind of on the same platform where they're just different sectors. So if you wanted to study both, I believe that you would go kind of on the marketing side and then you'd pick a specialty. So usually, especially if you're working for a bigger firm, they're going to have a PR team. They're going to have a paid ads team. They'll have a creative team. They'll have a graphic designer. And they all kind of work together to get your whole advertising, marketing budget and process done.
Awesome. Thank you for that. The next question is, how can I improve on my writing skills?
Practice. Become a contributor for small blogs. So you can have your own blog or you can jump on Medium as one where you can post basically for free and you can share your stories and then get feedback. I'm not the best writer, but I've become decent just by practice and asking for help throughout the process. I think that that's an important part. And if you're still in school, take some English and writing courses. That's what they're there for. But writing is going to be very critical, especially with the transition to more things being digital. As your communication, you're doing most of your work online, is you have to write. You're doing Facebook posts, you're doing email marketing, you're doing emails. Half my job is just emails, and professionally communicating through emails is a big part of it. Is you want to make people feel good, and there are some people you deal with that are terrible at just emailing and they communicating correctly. You get on the phone, they're the nicest person ever, but you read their emails and you're like, why is this person yelling at me? And that's just because they're putting things in the wrong tense and they're speaking incorrectly through email. It's just bad communication. So again, just practice and jump on one of those forums like Medium and start writing about something you're passionate about.
What made you decide to own your own business? Next question.
So a book that I recommend to everyone is The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I was working corporate for an engineering firm and wasn't loving it. I enjoyed my job and it was a great company, a really good company, but I wasn't passionate about it. And then I saw during a recession for the energy sector, they started letting people go, people that have been there 20, 30 years, or even me straight out of college, I had $15,000 cut out of my benefits and my 401k was cut and my relocation was cut and all of these things were changing. And I was like, wow, I don't have control. I thought that this was the safe path, but I don't actually have control. The company's always first. I'm not part of this company. I'm not a founder and they can let me go at any point. And so that's when I was like, I need to take some control, because at any day, if you're like, I need $2,000 tomorrow, I can go make a couple phone calls and sell a website or sell a PR service or figure out what I need to do. I have the ability now to make a service and sell it very quickly. because of those skills I've created. And I think as an entrepreneur, again, I started off selling $50 items, and now I can sell $5,000 items over the phone and close over the phone. So it's just an acquired skill that you get throughout time, but the ability to make your own money and not rely on someone else is going to be critical to kind of taking it to the next level of, I think, what a lot of people will see on TV and dream of, those boats and those yachts. That's never going to happen corporately, or at least very hard to do corporately. But as an entrepreneur, you always have that opportunity to give yourself a raise.
Yeah, I like that answer because I said this before COVID-19, that there's no such thing as a safe job.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a safe job. I don't care what you're doing, and anything can happen. A lot of people didn't believe that, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit and people believed it. And if you're going to chase safe pathways, it's not something I recommend. I always recommend you follow what you're good at, your passion, your innate abilities, your strengths. You take them to the marketplace, you hone on a career, you use those strengths and your abilities to earn an income, and you like what you do. And, I heard for years people telling me that at events, well, Zach, I've been at this 20 years. There's no way I'm getting laid off, and I've got a pension coming in 10 years. You don't know that. And so I think the coronavirus has definitely changed that perspective where, you hate to say, I told you so, but, that there's no such thing as a safe path. And I try to emphasize that with students is that, we try, it's easy for our parents because my parents say the same thing. We want you to have a secure, safe job, but there's just no such thing as that. So thanks for touching on that. Last question. Go ahead.
I think now more than ever, especially with the pandemic, things like that, there's no such thing as a safe job. And especially mine, as an entrepreneur, your job is not safe. The skills that you make it more safe. So the cool thing is if all my businesses disappeared tomorrow, I've now developed skills to go make money. And I think that people that say 20 years in one job, if that job gets dissolved or disappeared or the funding gets cut, they might not have the skills to go out there and make money or even get transitioned into another job, especially if they're a little bit older in their career and farther along. It's going to be very hard for them. Whereas I know for a fact, no matter what happens tomorrow, I could go make money because I've made the specific skill of making money. And it's not always easy, but I know how to do it. And it's a skill. It's not a job. So you can't take that away from me. And no matter what the depression is, I'll find an opportunity because that's what I've learned to do. And so that's something that's important is I think even people that are in that safe job, they should always have some kind of side hustle. Even if your side hustle is making you $10 a day. That was my initial goal was I started selling something on eBay and I was like, hey, if I make $10 a day, that's awesome. That goes right into my retirement. I'm gonna live a little better when I retire because of those $10 a day. And that's how this whole thing started. So I'd say anyone in that safe job, always have a side job, always have something that's bringing in $5,000 to $10,000 a year that you are training yourself to be able to scale. And I think that makes diversifying. You diversify in the stock market. Why wouldn't you diversify your life? Like that's just silly to put everything in one basket. For a lot of the younger college kids, I don't know if you've heard of Enron, but basically a stock company or a gas company that went out of business. And people had their retirement in there and they lost everything because they were all Enron. Everything was Enron. And so don't do that with your life is kind of the story.
Scott, it's like almost you stole my book and read it early because I have a chapter devoted on diversifying your career portfolio. And I also have a chapter on side hustles. And I also, one of the things I recommend people to do is sell something on eBay, Craigslist, get that experience because you never know where that might take you. So before we end the show, I just want to let people know, let's say they're out there listening from a different angle. Tell us where they can find your company, any links you want to give or anything like that. Feel free to share it.
So anyone can connect with me on Instagram at Fallon Scott. That's my personal Instagram. I respond to pretty much every DM as long as it's thought out. Don't send me a smiley face. I won't respond to that. Sorry. But if you send me a question, I will respond. And then my website is otterpr.com. It's OTTERPR.com. You can just go to contact us there and I'm happy to respond. I like mentoring. So I support people. If you want to jump on with a group Zoom call and ask me more personal questions about business or marketing, things like that, I'm happy to help.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time. This has been very helpful to the audience. I'm really glad that you came for us and the show. Good luck to you. You're an inspiration. We appreciate it, and have a great day.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.